In this demonstration, we're going to teach you how to back up data from your hard disk drive using the Ntbackup utility. There's a couple of ways you can get to the backup utility. One way is to go to My Computer, pick a drive, right-click on it, select Properties, select Tools, and then select Backup Now under Backup. This will load the Ntbackup utility. Here we have three different options. We can use the Backup Wizard, we can use the Restore Wizard, or we can create an ASR set. If you don't want to use the wizard, you can also do it manually by selecting the Backup tab or the Restore tab right here. We'll go back over here to the Welcome tab, and we'll first do this with the wizard. We'll go ahead and select Backup Wizard, click Next in the Welcome screen, and then we have to specify what it is we want to back up. Depending on what you're doing, you may want this option, which will back up the entire computer, or you may want this option if you only want to back up the user's data. That will be a choice that you have to make based on your organization's backup policy. For what we're doing here today, we're going to back up just some selected data for the sake of time. I'm going to select Next. Now we have to specify what it is we want to back up. We're going to back up the My Documents folder. The My Documents folder is where we have some sample files, and we're going to back them up. Now, I'm going to select Next. Now we have to specify where we're going to back the data up to. If you have a tape drive installed in the system, then you can select the tape drive from the Select Backup type. Now, because this is a demo system, it doesn't have a tape drive in it. But that's okay, because we can back up to a file. We can back up to a file on a floppy disk, which won't work unless you're only doing a very small amount of information. Or you can back up to a file on a hard disk drive. And that hard disk drive could be in the local computer or over a network connection on a different computer. Either way will work just fine. For now, let's select Browse. We'll double-click My Computer, and then we'll go to New Drive, and we'll name this Backup.bkf. We'll go ahead and select Save. Now the backup of my documents will be saved to our E drive. We'll hit Next. Now at this point, you could select Finish and let the Backup Wizard do its job. However, it's always a good idea to hit this Advanced tab because you need to specify which type of backup you're going to do. For what we're doing, we're going to do a full backup, which is normal. Let's select Next. And this is the key thing I wanted to show you. If you did not use the Advanced tab right there before you selected Finish, then your backup would not be verified. An unverified backup is a risky deal. You need to always verify your backups, because a bad backup is not worth anything. You might as well not back up at all. I'll select Next, and then you have several options. Do you want to append this backup to an existing backup or replace an existing backup? This is the first time we've done the backup, so we're just going to replace the existing backup. Go ahead and select Next. And it says, when do you want to run this? Do you want to run this now, or do you want to run it on a schedule? If we want to do the job manually, we can leave this set to be now. However, if we want to run this on a schedule, which is not a bad idea, you can let Windows run the backup for you. As long as you have the backup media installed and ready to go, Windows can run the backup for you. You just have to come in the morning and make sure that it happened. If we select this option, we can say, give it a job name, My Job, and then we'll select the schedule. And here we can say, when does this happen? Does it happen once? Does it happen daily, weekly, monthly, at system startup, at log on, when the system's idle? Lots of different options. Let's say we want to set this to happen daily at 9:30 p.m. Every night the backup's going to run. And we can specify how frequently, every 1 day, every 2 days, every 3 days. More than likely you're going to want to do this every single day. Go ahead and select OK. Now this is a very important screen. Remember that the backup engine has to run as a user account on the system to back up data. You need to configure a user account that will be used for the backup engine. Remember that there is a group that's created by default in Windows called Backup Users that will give the backup engine the privileges that it needs to back up files and nothing else. For what we're doing here, I'm just going to leave it as the currently logged in user. If you were using this in a production environment, you would create a special backup user, make it a member of the backup group, and specify that the backup engine run as that user account to do the backup job. Now, for what we're doing here in this demonstration, we're actually going to just do it now rather than on a schedule. So I'm going to mark now, then select next, and then select finish. And now at this point, the system will conduct its backup. And you'll notice here in just a second that before the backup occurs, it will actually create a restore point just in case the backup process messes up something that you didn't want messed up. Okay, the backup is now complete. Before selecting close, I always like to check the report because this file has a very important parameter that you want to look at, and that is this one right here. It has lots of information in it, but the one I'm concerned with is under verify. Verify of C. It says different, 0. That's good. What it does is it goes through and checks the files in the backup against the original files, and it checks to make sure that they are the same size. If they are not the same size, then we know that something happened, and more than likely the backed up version of the file is probably corrupt for some reason. As long as this is different, is set to 0, you're in good shape. So check that and make sure. Otherwise, you've got a bad backup that won't help you much if you ever have to restore. So we'll go ahead and select close, and our backup is now complete. We're going to restore data from that backup. Now, to simulate a terrible disaster happening, I'm going to go into my documents. The backup file contains all of these directories and folders right here. I'm going to pretend that a really horrible accident happened. Something happened to this hard drive. It got mangled, and we lost those 5 files, and they were very important files. We need to get them back. We're going to restore them using the Ntbackup utility. Now, there's many different ways you can get to the Ntbackup utility. You just open up a command window and enter Ntbackup. Now, there's 2 different ways you can run a backup. You can use the wizard, or you can manually configure a restoration job with the Restore and Manage Media tab. Let's go ahead and do this with the Restore wizard. The welcome screen, we'll select Next. Now we need to specify which backup file we want to use. We've ran several test backups, and we need to make sure that we use the correct one. We want to use the one that was created last. We'll mark that right there. The backup created at 2:37 was the most recent one. Then we'll select the Next button. At this point, we could go ahead and run the restore. However, there are a lot of important options on the Advanced tab. We'll go to that first. The first option is, where do we want to restore the files to? Do we want them to put them back in their original location? Do we want to put them in an alternate location? Or do we just want to dump all the files into a single folder on the hard disk drive? More than likely, you're going to want to use original location. There will be times when you don't, but for the most part, this is what you'll want to do. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to put those files right back into my documents. When it's restoring, it may run into files or folders that in the backup that still exist on the hard disk drive. What do you want to do? Do you want to just replace the files on the hard disk drive? If so, you mark this option. If you want to replace the files on the hard disk drive, if the files on the hard disk drive are older than the files in the backup, then you leave that option. Or if you just want to leave them intact, you select this option. Select Next. Then we select the options that we want to use. Do we want to restore our security settings? Yes. Do we want to restore junction points, but not the folders and the files they reference? That doesn't apply to the backup we're doing right now. And do we want to preserve existing volume mount points? Of course. We'll go ahead and select Next. Now we'll select Finish. We'll wait while it mounts the media, copies the files out of the backup back into their original location. Notice that it's creating a restore checkpoint before it restores the files. Just in case something happens during the restoration, we want to be able to revert the system. But remember that that system restore has no effect on these files in my documents. It only affects the system files and device driver files and system configuration settings and things like that. All right, the restoration is complete. Let's check our report and make sure there were no errors. Reading through this, it sounds like everything restored as they were supposed to. We'll go ahead and close this. We'll select Close here. Now let's go into my documents and verify that those files came back, and sure enough, there they are. Every one of those files that we needed is back. And now you can go home and rest and not worry, because you know that you're protected with a good backup that you know how to restore.